Just your
action.
Just the live gig.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon. We've got one of the most chaotic periods in British politics, political history, in my memory. Probably in world politics and history. So those are almost certainly the themes I'm going to be talking about today. Have you got any specific questions before I...
What was Marx's two versions of history?
I prefer to try and stick to some contemporary and come back to those sort of things as a separate thing later on maybe. Yeah?
Okay.
So today's issues.
Will there be another election? Because it looks like it's going to happen.
Yeah, personally, I mean, there's obviously reasons for thinking that the population we're told wants an election, but the Conservative Party don't, for obvious reasons that they're likely to lose, and they don't have to call an election. So that's the standard discussion within the media, which we're all aware of. Yeah? So then the question comes, what happened? Well, one of the people I asked a little while ago made a good point, and I think that's true, and it's what came to my mind the moment that Liz Truss handed in her resignation. Even for me that was unexpected, because I said, probably before Christmas or something like that last week, but now we've got, it was like 2 days later she's gone. So the question remained, why did she go? Here you have a Prime Minister elected by the Conservative Party only 6 weeks ago. Should have had a bit of a boost actually from the fact that she was around, she was the Prime Minister when the new king came to power and the Queen died, and so normally you'd think they should be able to get some sort of boost out of that type of national hullabaloo. And then we had instead something governed by, as I said last week, governed by what was called the markets. So a friend of mine spoke earlier on and he said to me, well, it's a coup d'etat in which the media pushed Truss out and pushed the present story. But of course the media were saying something different, and I think they're right in saying something different. They were saying it's the markets. Now what are the markets? The market doesn't mean Portobello Road or Brick Lane or Camden Lock. The market means the City of London, Wall Street, international finance. And within international finance, Wall Street and the City of London, you've got a handful of big players who dominate global markets. And they say what's good and say what's bad. And they are interconnected with a cabal of giant business or business elites who shape the agendas of national governments around the world, provided they have some mechanisms of control over the national governments. So, one is you could have chats with people. As I understand it, Liz Truss was spoken to by a number of people from the City of London in the week before she was removed from office. And she declared that she wouldn't stand down. But nevertheless, a few days later, down she goes, down the Swanee. Not only that, but one day before, in Parliament she said, I'm a fighter, not a quitter.
Right.
And yet the same evening, or the next morning, something happened. And the Prime Minister of our noble and bold democracy, our the longest historical political party in the world, is removed from office.
Right.
And the public are forced to watch the charade. Here Karl Marx comes in. History repeats itself first as a tragedy, then as a farce.
Right.
And here we have an utter farce. But nevertheless, it suits the interests of the markets. And by the way, it was the markets. Let's not pretend. anything else. It was the markets, and by the markets, it just means that that really big players, and we know who the really big players are. At the top of the pyramid,
Right.
there are two companies, one called Vanguard and one called BlackRock,
Come on.
who pretty much own 10 to 15% of the shares in all the major companies in the world.
Right.
And those companies, by the way, they were behind. They were behind the pandemic theatre.
Exactly.
They were behind the lockdown theatre.
Yes.
And they're behind the war theatre.
Here.
And now they declare, and by the way, the cost of living crisis theatre. Because here we have, don't forget, the Soviet Union, we used to say, the Soviet Union is a basket case economy. That's what they used to say, remember? The Soviet Union, basket case economy. And yet the Soviet Union, they weren't every winter facing blackouts of power. They've got huge resources. Yes, Russia has huge resources. But do you think Britain doesn't have vast energy resources? Britain has some of the highest density of energy resources per capita in the world, in the form of deep mine coal. And yet the British government says we have to worry now. No. We have to worry because this winter, they're saying, on very cold days, we should expect the power to be cut off for 3 or 4 hours a day. 3 or 4 hours a day.
They haven't said that.
They have said that. Yes, 3 or 4 hours a day in the winter. If we get a long cold spell,
Power cat.
we will have power cuts in Britain.
Right.
Because this is the country with North Sea oil and the highest quality deep mine coal in the world. And why will we have power cut off? Because if you have a terrible combination of factors, in other words, not much wind, like today, not much wind, then Britain's mainstay, future, power supply, windmills, will not supply enough electricity for the people. And we will have, the tridemic, the flu, the coronavirus, and no power. And by the way, millions of people already are unable to pay their basic bills. Bills have gone from £30 a month to £100 a month,
Right.
or 120, or 150, or £200 a month.
Hey, keep the noise down.
Oi, we're speaking here. Go tell him. Go tell him quickly.
He's gonna come back with a broken nose and a busted lip. Big mistake.
Stephen Hawking.
I'll have to take over, won't I?
It'll be Stephen Hawking here.
I'll have to take over. Me and you.
You know his electronic voice, isn't it?
Me and you have got me. Count you.
They all shut
Did
up.
it work? Did it work?
It worked.
It worked.
They may be on news.
There are some times when it doesn't. But today it did. They all knew me and they were, oh, all right.
Punch in the mouth. Bloody
I was
nose.
going to start again in a minute, but never mind. Now, they do love each other. That's the trouble. The same guys are always at each other's throat like that, and then and then 20 minutes later, they're split, they're calming down and they have a little chat again. That's right. Go back over there. Thank you. Follow them with cameras, quick. Now, where were we? So the cost of living crisis, you see.
What's the solution?
End the war.
No, that's the problem. What's the
Stop arm. End the war. Stop arming Ukraine. Make a deal. Nationalise
Who makes the deal?
the oil industry and the gas industry.
Even the Russian ones.
Of course, the Russian ones. What do you think?
Yes. Okay, just check it.
They will. You think there's never going to be a deal? You think America and Britain are going to go to war with Russia, defeat Russia, occupy Russia, and make them submit? They're not going to do that. They're not even claiming they're going to do that. No one's claiming they're going to do that. So all it is how long will they continue to fund the war in Ukraine? The excuse, by the way, not the reason. The excuse for the general crisis of capitalism in the West. That's all it is. It's not the actual reason. The actual reason goes back to before the pandemic, when the economy was on the edge of collapse in December 2019. And at that time, different factions of the ruling classes turned on one another and battled for power. You're in a game. When everybody's making money, when the economy's going forward, all the businesses can march together. Everyone gets a little piece of the cake. Sometimes they get some money from the government. They're all marching forward in unison. Capitalism is progress. But then, well, this is the idea I'm saying. I said this is the idea they suggest. But then what happens? That's what they argue. So then what happens? One layer, one important economic faction, the pharmaceutical industry, the security services, the healthcare sector, the mathematical calculation department, forecast and projection department. They made a play for power. And they swept the board across the world, backed by Rishi Sunak, steady hand Rishi. Steady hand Rishi, they're calling him. The man with the steady economic hand. Someone said to me earlier on, I don't know if the figure's right, but roughly true. He spent 250 or more billion pounds on subsidies around the so-called pandemic. 250, chuck the money, hand over fist. There is no money tree, they said about Jeremy Corbyn. And 2 months later, the money tree started pumping out. Not only in Britain, but in every Western country. Money was pumped out of the printing presses. And then there's all this inflation now. Caused by Russia. Nothing to do with spending trillions of dollars during the pandemic, while also telling people, stay at home, save lives, save the health service, wear a mask, don't go to work from home. Stay at home instead of school, at home instead of college, go on Zoom, and the tech industry boomed, and Uber delivery boomed, and Google boomed, and Zoom boomed, and what's his name, Elon Musk, Starlink, sounds like something out of Star Trek, and it is, by the way. Thousands of satellites circling the Earth. Why do they have satellites circling the Earth? To help you? To provide you with high quality internet? To let you masturbate better on Pornhub? Is that why? Or are they simply trying to observe the Earth, to monitor the Earth, to squeeze as much wealth and power as they can out of every single human being on Earth? In the name of protecting your health, because they care about your health, That's why you go to the shop, I mean, after all, they've got shops across the road here. I don't know, nothing against someone smoking cigarettes, but there's shops selling cigarettes. And everybody knows 9 million people a year die of cigarettes. So why are they so worried about coronavirus? When they've got 9 million people every year, dying of cigarettes. Sorry?
And alcohol.
Alcohol as well. I mean, people are free to choose to take these things, in my opinion. It's perfectly fine for them to do that, in my opinion. But the idea, it just shows that when they say they shut down the world to save our health, it was an absolute and complete lie. The Jewish community, by the way, I know, there was a study of the Jewish community in North London, carried out by the School of Tropical Medicine at the University of London. What did they find? In the first summer of 2020, they studied the Hasidic Jews in Stoke Newington. What did they find? None of them abide by the rules. The lockdown rules were ignored. You know how many died? 3. 3 died. The number of people who died as a percentage of the population was lower than the population who were locked down. Lower. So if you did not lock down, you saved lives. And now we know that for sure. Look at the statistics on excess deaths. Now, excess deaths in Britain, 15 to 20% higher than before the pandemic. 15 to 20%. Now nobody knows why that's happening. Apparently, nobody knows why that's happening. Nobody. I got an itch on my arm. That's all it is. Don't worry. Google, don't worry. I'm not trying to say anything illegal because you're not allowed to say things now. I used to live in East Germany. I lived in China. I learned how to say something without saying it. And now everybody in Britain who wants to express themselves has to learn what it was like in East Germany or in China. Everybody has to do that. Otherwise you're censored, cut off, deleted, eradicated, eviscerated from history and from all good society. Because all good society knows there are some things you say and some things you cannot say. The forbidden zones. And the forbidden zones are all about what the truth is. The truth is, I can't stand Liz Truss. But she was removed by a coup d'etat. A coup d'etat. There was no democratic process involved.
Right.
She'd been elected 6 weeks before by the Conservative Party, at least a formally democratic process. What happened in the week before Liz Truss was removed is almost certainly the following. A couple of senior executives in a couple of major companies which dominate the British stock market decided over weeks they would sabotage, attack and undermine the government in order to remove them and to put one of their puppets, whose name is Rishi Sunak, in power, in preparation to put another of their puppets, whose name is Keir Starmer, in power. Keir Starmer, and you can even, Karl Marx used to say, back to Karl Marx. Karl Marx used to say, capitalists are not in themselves evil. He had nothing against individual capitalists. He said, what they do, however, is they behave like in a Greek theatre, wearing a character mask. And when they put this mask on to perform their role, then their character changes to become something else. Why do people queue up for 15 hours to go past a wooden box in Westminster Abbey? Why? Because in that wooden box is a lady who used to wear a crown and live in a palace and be called the Queen. If she lived in Burnley, in a one up, one down house, in a terrace street, and she smoked fags in the morning till night, and she went down the cafe, and everyone said, all right, Queenie, no one would queue up to go and see her casket, apart from her family and friends. So the character mask is that there's a couple of guys wear yellow jackets and on bicycles with white helmets over there. They call themselves police officers. When something happens here, or when nothing happens here, they chase around, harassing people. One of them physically attacked me on a number of occasions. He's a thug and a criminal. He didn't only attack me, he attacked several other people at Speaker's Corner. And we videoed it all. It's all on YouTube. But he wears a uniform and he's got a badge which says he's a police officer. And because of that, he wears a character mask. He becomes somebody different when he's at work. That's when his aggression, his violence, his criminality. Look at Wayne Couzens. Here we had a police officer serving in Parliament with a gun in his pocket. Turned round to a young girl. What was she, 25, 27? At 9 o'clock at night in Clapham. Showed her his card. Wore his character mask. Said,
said, get in the car, you're breaking lockdown rules. You're breaking coronavirus. I'm a policeman. So she turns around and respects the policeman. The policeman puts her in the car, pulls out the gun, handcuffs her, rapes her, burns her body, disposes her in the woods, and then turns up next day for work. Adopting his character mask again. You see, power. They used to say, I can't remember the guy, Lord Ashford or something like that. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That is perfectly true. And now we have, in the world today, absolute power by giant multinationals divided between a few factions. And they talked about globalization. We'd unite the world under one vision, all the capitalists together. We'll introduce digital controls. We'll organise the world in our interest. We'll lock down to save the world. We'll unlock to save the world. We'll jab to save the world. And then they break up into different fighting factions. Isn't it always the case in history? An oligarch, a tyranny, an emperor hold almighty power, tyrannical power, single power, one-man dictatorship. And then amongst them you get an entourage, a coterie, who they rely upon. No ruler rules on their own. So they rely upon a network of supporters. And those network of supporters form into factions. And those factions fight each other over the future. That is what we have in a farcical sense in England today.
Right.
The farce of power, the farce of administration, the farce of capital, the farce of unity.
That's right.
They are fighting. There is no way. I spoke to Steve earlier on. He said, oh, well, you know, I think they'll try to get a united government. United by what? United by what? The only thing that unites them is they've all got their finger in the till. They all want to grab what they can. Because some people might say Rishi Sunak has got £720 million anyway. He doesn't need his finger in the pie. But here we are, the guys in blue. Our heroes, our saviours. So Rishi Sunak, they say, well, he might push the agenda. And then they say, well, Bojo might unite the party, come out with a new face, adopt a new character. They even say it with him. It's not even hidden with him. With him you say, he's going to come with a new character. Because he's a play actor. We know that he's always done that. Since he was a child, he said, I want to be king of the world. In other words, he wants to put on a new mask, put on a new face, show to the people he's different. Nick, would you mind just a wee bit further over? Show the world is a new policy, a new government, a new idea. He has no new ideas. He has no new policies. Everything has turned to dust. And for that reason, you see, we have the chaos that has broken out now. And by the way, if there was an election, don't be so stupid as to think it will make the slightest difference.
Right.
Keir Starmer will introduce policies.
Tory spy.
Sorry?
He's a Tory spy.
Well, he's a Tory spy. Well, there's no doubt about it. That the objective of Keir Starmer was to drive out Jeremy Corbyn, because Corbyn, in one way or another, represented something a little bit different. Because he said we'll spend money on welfare, we'll look after the poor, that type of thing. And for that he was vilified, castigated, attacked, and accused, bizarrely, of all accusations of being an anti-Semite and a terrorist supporter. That was the argument that they promoted, year in, year out, day in, day out, minute in, minute out. And as soon as Jeremy Corbyn was gone, all the anti-Semitism disappeared from the Labour Party. As if by magic. That's what they said. As if by magic. It was all gone. And Keir Starmer first thing he did, removed Jeremy Corbyn, bang, out. And once he'd done that, then he had command, the man in charge. What was wrong with Jeremy Corbyn? No spine. Jeremy Corbyn should have wielded the sword and booted these people out, Keir Starmer and co. But he didn't. He thought he could compromise. He believed in the system. He believed in parliamentary democracy and all its mirage. But now we see where we are. The utter and complete farce. There is no parliamentary democracy. There is no party democracy. The party elected I can't stand Truss, but the party elected her. And it was big business. The City of London, the big bureaucrats, and the big global players. Why do you think you've got puppets? Look at them. Keir Starmer, one puppet. He resembles Rishi Sunak, the other puppet. Rishi Sunak a bit smoother in his language. Keir Starmer a bit emptier and a bit like a piece of wood who has got nothing to say and never has anything to say. And then Emmanuel Macron, and then Justin Trudeau, and then Jacinda Ardern, or whatever her name is, in New Zealand, all cut from the same cloth. Every single one of them behaves, talks, thinks, acts the same, and represents exactly the same interests.
That's right.
So anybody who's telling you that we have a parliamentary democracy where we elect the leaders and we choose who we get, it's clearly an absolute lie.
Correct.
You neither elect, when you elect in a parliament, you elect the representatives, they do what the hell they like, which serves the interests of the lobbyists, and the lobbyists are big business.
And they don't stick to their manifestos.
They don't stick to of course they don't stick to the manifesto. The only purpose is to be in power. If one of them could stick to a manifesto, maybe they would, but the reality is the markets tell them what they must, can and will do. And the markets are controlled by these big factions. There is a WEF, World Economic Forum, and WHO faction of the ruling class. There is. It's not disputable. It's blatantly obvious. They state it themselves. It's not hidden. They want a fourth industrial revolution. They want digital control of the world. They want satellite control of the world. And they want military control of the world. And by the way, the Ukraine war. What's going on in the Ukraine war? What goes on in any war? The boys with the toys test out their toys. And that's what they're doing. And they talk about nuclear weapons. You don't have to worry about nuclear weapons now. That's not the game. The game is autonomous, artificial intelligence drones. That's the game. You fly up into the air with a carrier, a large aeroplane which carries 20,000 drones, autonomous drones. You drop them out of the aeroplane, and then they're given artificial intelligence targets. For example, they look at your face from the internet, and they enter it in, and then the drone flies around London and finds you and blows you up. That's the way it works. That's exactly how the drone warfare in Ukraine is happening now. And the drones are made by the Indians, by the Chinese, by the Russians, by the Americans, by the Turks. There's a global battle for control of the drones of the world. And the drones as weapons. And that means these drones will get smaller and smaller. And they will be able to kill you with an object the size of a fly. That's the direction they want to go in. Or they'll be able to save you. Save you with a medical intervention from the air. Without you even knowing. They'll be able to save your health. You know those stupid people who refuse to get vaccinated? They can vaccinate them from the air. Without them even knowing it. You drop a little bit of stuff in the air. You know, they've got kids now, they've been given inhaled flu jab. So they give you inhaled COVID jab, inhaled malaria jab, inhaled. Now I saw an advert, you see that the other day? You want to get this? I got an advert on Facebook, my Lord and Saviour, Metaverse. And the advert said, I can't know, iodine something or other, that protects you against nuclear war. Maybe it protects you against nuclear war. And that they're trying to sell me on the internet to protect myself. Back in the day, we used to make a little shelter in the back garden, and you crawl into the shelter. Or if you're at school in the 1950s, they told you to jump under a table, and they'd train you to jump under a table. Duck and cover. I've always got my ladder just in case. But now you see, it's all about control from outer space, control of cyberspace, and control of human beings. And the battle for control of human beings is between different technology finance, pharma, companies. There are others as well, but those are and military companies. These companies are battling out. They aren't a unified force. They do disagree with each other, but they disagree with each other at the margin. The key thing which unites them is the struggle for global power. But that struggle for global power is, by the way, the idea of the universal globalization, that's out the window. China's going one way, Russia's going another way, India's going another way, Iran is going another way, Africa will go another way, South America will go another way. What we have is a splintering of world power. And in that splintering world power, we will always be the targets for accumulation. We are the ones who must be plundered. Trotsky once said, I repeat, you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. What is the mobile phone? It's not a secret. It's a weapon of war. It's made by the military. All the key components are military components. The CIA invented the touch-tone screen. The intelligence agencies and NASA invented the microchips, as they are. The communication devices. All of them are part of global military intelligence development. So that when you go on that phone, you think, what, you own my phone? The phone itself, you can't alter what's in the phone without being told this phone is no longer, we will never again service this phone, they say. If you change what's in the phone, if I go on the screen and I type in on Google, search, whatever, green jackets, when I type on my screen, you'd think my typing belonged to me, but it doesn't. My typing belongs to Google, or belongs to Firefox, or Alta Vista, or used to be, or one of the other search engines. It belongs to them. It doesn't belong to you. You think these devices belong to you? They don't. They are the mechanism of control over humanity used today. That's a very simple fact. And the idea they have is that these machines will be attached to your brain, inserted into your brain, and become a mechanism of control over your brain. That's what they're arguing for. Elon Musk has made probe systems whereby minuscule nano-sized probes are entered into the brain for a direct mind-machine communication. We already have mind-machine communication. What is the mind-machine communication? They come on television and they say, stay at home. Protect yourself against the virus. It comes through a screen. And then you stay at home. Because the screen has told you, Bojo, a guy who looks like an alien, and another guy, oh, you know the guy's name. And another guy standing there, eager, all owning big shares in Big Pharma, tell you, next slide please, stay at home. Next slide please, stay at home. Next slide please, stay at home. That's what it meant. Next slide please, take a vax. Next slide please, take another vax. Next slide please, take another vax. That's the message you must take home.
They play you.
Through the internet, they feed you it. Through the television, they feed you it.
Right.
And were any journalists at any time critical of any single suggestion from the government or the state right throughout the last 2.5 years? No. Suddenly, however, once the pandemic was over, and they declared it over by declaring another crisis in play. The pandemic ended exactly at the same time as the war began. How bloody convenient. And meanwhile, pandemic was deleted, or partly deleted, at least deleted from the popular conversation and mind. If you go to the ordinary man on the street, no one is even washing their bloody hands anymore. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. I went down the street the other day, I saw someone without a mask on. I did. And someone came on telly and said, I didn't get a vaccine yet. I mean, what's the matter with these people? Don't they know we're all going to die? And yet now the whole story's changed. Now you get deleted. If you say, oh, were the Ukrainians using human shields in Mariupol. Deleted. Are the Russians all revolting against the war in Ukraine? Yes, supported. Is Ukraine a country fighting for freedom and democracy? Is the war good? Supported. So everything must be fed to you. You must sit down. You're like these force feeding in a prison. You know, when they captured the suffragettes and they said, we're going to starve ourselves to death for our cause. They pinned them down, tied them up and stuffed food into their stomach. So now they have the mechanism where you do it yourself. You stick your thing on and it feeds you and you swallow it and then you go and repeat it. And you say, the consensus, the scientific consensus. Well, we're all scientists now, aren't we? We're not as good as scientists as the virologists and the experts, because they're really good scientists. I mean, they're just great. You know, Patrick Vallance, I mean, it's just fantastic. Chris Whitty, you know, he might look like an alien. Oh, but what an alien. Did we ever have a real alien on telly before? It was all that stuff, Star Trek, Star Wars. Now we've got a real one who knows all the science. And I went to a meeting with him, we tried to ask him a question, and he ran away. Neil Ferguson, a brilliant mind. At Imperial College, we went to a meeting, asked him a question, he ran away. Matt Hancock, Minister of Health, asked him a question, he ran away. Maria Van Kerkhove, World Health Organization, asked her a question, ran away. That's just me. What if everyone goes and asks them a question? Are they always going to run away? By the way, well, who removed Liz Truss? That's the question I want to know. Who removed Liz Truss? Who made the decision? Wasn't she elected by the party? Now, it wasn't a 3-month process because you needed a genuine democratic process to present to the public the different viewpoints within the Conservative Party and let the members of the party decide in a democratic vote, because they voted, or they paid money to be in the party. And you know what all the Conservatives want now, the members of Parliament? They want Monday to be a one-horse race, only one person. And then they want the election, which last time was 3 months long. Now it's got to be 5 days. 4 days actually, isn't it? Monday and on Friday we're going to know who they've appointed to rule over us. So I ask you this, there are several questions here, isn't it? Who's in power in Britain and around the world? How do they decide what happens? What control do we have over them? There was a programme, Al Jazeera, the Labour Files. You know, we know the Tory party now are a dictatorship appointed by some people. But the Labour Files showed the Labour Party, the phrase they use at the beginning is, the Labour Party is a criminal conspiracy against its own members. That's what they say. So if the Labour Party is a criminal conspiracy against its members, and the Tory party is controlled by dark forces we don't even know who their faces are, then we cannot say we live in a democracy. And if they have the right, on demand, to lock us up for years on end, well then surely we have a right to say, revolt, rebel, overthrow these people. What does it mean? It means democracy can only exist when you elect people. I think it's a good idea to hold an election in a few days. Because if they can elect the Prime Minister of the country in 4 days, why can't we remove them and have another one in 4 days? Or 4 days they'd have an election, a general election, online. Or why can't we have mass meetings to vote these people in or out? Why can't we recall the members of Parliament right across the country? Why can't we have genuine democracy where if we elect someone, we can remove them at any time? If it's okay to remove the Prime Minister that way, by a fraudulent manipulation and coup d'etat, then why can't we remove officials at every level, every council, every MP, every local judge, every High Court judge, every senior police officer, every senior official in university, and indeed every senior manager inside the major workplaces and the major companies in Britain and the world? Why can't we have a genuine democracy controlled from below, by the people, for the people? That's what I believe we need.
Dr. Heiko, Khoo, thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll call a halt there. That's enough, I think.
How many do you do a day?
Do what?
Speak up. Is it once a day then?
Oh, once on a Sunday.
Once on Sunday.
Heiko,
Fine.
where are you posting that? Because I want a copy of that.
That's on YouTube. It's on YouTube now.
On your channel.
Subject access.
Yeah, subject right. That's worth sharing. That's brilliant.
Great,
That,
do it.
absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good one today.
Don't you believe that probably that the offer from no,
Okay, sorry.
Because
let me turn it off.
Biden said that she's not agree with them. He not agree with them.
Yeah.
So means that
And normally, no politician abroad does that. Normally, no politician says your government is not right.
Yeah.
Right? Except in extreme circumstances.
Yeah,